We know it as the city of the Taj. But this once grand capital, Agra, hides many gems within, which narrate the story of its layered past. While Agra saw the rise of one of the most powerful empires, the Mughals, there's a lot to explore before and beyond the Mughal past of the city. Even today, Agra carries the echoes of its past, with its rich culture and traditions. In this special film, Tahir Ahmed, filmmaker and founder of Agra Heritage Walk, takes us on a journey through Agra, its history, the lesser known monuments here, and the vibrant culture of the city.
Hi, my name is Tahir Ahmed and I am from Agra and very, very proud to be from the city. My ancestors, my forefathers, they came all the way from Bukhara to Agra in the 1650s, which was the high pinnacle of the city, which was the time when the city attracted people from all over the globe, be it researchers, be it scientists, be it poets, anyone. This was the place to be, this was the happening place. But there is a reason why Mughals came to Agra. They came to Agra because they wanted to secure the treasury of the Lodi Sultans. That's why they came to Agra. And why did those Lodi Sultans come to Agra? Well, the history of Agra is very, very interesting, quite complex, and it can make us question ourselves about where do we want to consider the history itself? Where do we see the beginning of history itself? Now, Agra as a city has been mentioned only after the 12th century, 13th century, but before that, if you talk about Mahabharata, it does name a place called Agra 1, which means that there is a forest ahead. And where is the forest ahead of? The forest is ahead of Mathura, which was one of the Mahajanpadas in the 6th century. So I believe that Agra, or the place, the physical geography of Agra, it is of course as old as time itself, but the city of Agra, it kind of flourished in the age of the Lodi Sultans, especially Sikandar Lodi. And in his honor, in his name, we still have a whole section in the city which is called Sikandra. This is the same place where Akbar's mortal remains are buried. And a place called Sikandra, which is right adjacent to the Grand Trunk Road or the Silk Route that we used to call it earlier, which is now the Asian Highway 1, the highway which connects China all the way to Turkey. There is poet Nazir Akbarabadi, who is the guru of Mirza Ghalib, the world-renowned poet. And Nazir Akbarabadi, he is living in the 18th century. Nazir Akbarabadi writes beautifully about the beginnings of the city. He says, रखता है गो कदीम से बुनियाद आगरा, अकबर के नाम से हुआ आबाद आगरा, यहाँ के खंडर न और जगह की इमारतें, यारों अजब मुकाम है दिलशाद आगरा. Which means the city of Agra belongs to the prehistoric times. He says, but the city was Abad, which means populated, under the reign of Akbar. He says, Akbar ke naam se hua Abad Agra. यहाँ के खंडर न और जगह की इमारतें, which means the ruins of this place and the beautiful monuments of this place, they talk about how this is a magnificent city, a city which is very close to the heart of the poet. This is what Nazir Akbarabadi says about the beginnings of the city.
The history of Agra goes further back than the Mughals, to the times of the Lodi dynasty in the 16th century CE. In 1504 to 1505, Sultan Sikandar Lodi, the Afghan ruler of the Delhi Sultanate, made Agra the seat of the government. Even today, you can find traces of the Lodis here. the most important of which is the city that Sikandar Lodi built, Sikandra.
When we talk about pre-Mughal Agra, we have to understand that Agra is in fact not one city. Like Delhi is a city of 7 cities, I think of Agra as a city of minimum of 3 cities. You can think about the prehistoric Agra, which was not a city, but definitely it was a place for the rishis and the munis to come and meditate or have their belonging. Not a city. Then it became the first city that sprung up was in around the 14th century. That's when Sikandar Lodi, he shifted his treasury from Delhi to Agra. That's when the city of Sikandra was found. And the monuments that we have from the Lodi era, they are all almost gone. But we still have certain mosques which can be found in the locality of Panja Madarsa. There is also an octagonal kind of structure which is right adjacent to the mausoleum of Akbar. It's right in the compound of the Akbar's tomb. Now, some people say that there is actually a grave which is below this octagonal structure, but I have never seen the grave. It is a small structure. It has certain rooms. It's not a big structure. So that is the time when people started living in the city which we now call as Agra. This city was founded right next to the river bank of Yamuna, the fertile plains of Yamuna. This city is also away from Delhi, which was receiving a lot of threats, a lot of attacks in the previous 2 centuries, 3 centuries. And I think these were the reasons that contributed to Sikandar Lodi founding his city here, and then later for the Mughal kings to be making their own capital city in Agra. Also, if you think about it, while the Mughals were in Agra, they never really faced much of a threat within the city. It's only when they would shift their capital to Delhi that they started facing issues in their administration, that they kind of started facing threats which were coming from beyond the country or from the Indus plains, from across the Indus River even. Then I think one of the reasons also which contributes to the founding of the city is the fact that this is kind of more of a center of the Lodi Sultanate than Delhi was. If you look at the map of Delhi Sultanate, Agra is more towards the center. So if a campaign has to be launched, if the king has to travel, and these are all traveling kings, okay, they are not stationary kings. They would travel with their retinues, they would travel with their armies, they would travel for even pleasure or for their diplomatic talks. So I think it makes more sense to be in the center of their empire than be at one corner of the empire or slightly distance to the centers. And of course, I mean, these people, they do not have access to the kind of modern transportation system that we have, aeroplanes, cars. They would mostly go on horseback, or they would have the ox carts, or a lot of people, they would just walk. A lot of messages, they were transmitted by running. So we are talking about the medieval period. So I think distance is also one of the important thing that plays a role in the foundation of the city and then later the flourishing of the city. The Mughals, that was a period that really brought the riches of around the world to Hindustan. And since Agra was the capital city for Mughals for majority of their time, it led to a flourishing atmosphere within the city. It led to development in terms of architecture, in terms of handicrafts, in terms of warfare, It revolutionized the way people used to dress, the way people used to think. So honestly, I mean, if you think about it, there was a total reformation in terms of ideas. For example, the religion of Deen Ilahi that was founded by the King Akbar, or the fact that the shoe industry flourished at that time, and before that time, shoes were a thing which were only limited to very limited people. If you look at older paintings, they are wearing these covered things, but these are not really sturdy shoes. The shoes, they were invented within the city, within Agra, and that's why we still have like a big shoe industry. The reason why this was invented was also because the demand was there and people were willing to pay. The emperor was willing to pay for the army so that they can buy the shoes. And think about it, I mean, if you have ever tried running without shoes on barren grounds, how far can you get? And think about now you're in a war where you're constantly being pricked by these stones and by these small things. How are you going to really fight? So from very basic things to quite advanced things to quite things which very little amount of people would use. For example, the art of Zardozi, to still greater things which were there for the people, for the world to see. And I'm referring to the Taj Mahal. All of this was made possible because of the Mughals. So why did the Mughals come to Agra? As I had said earlier, they came here to secure the treasury of the Lodhis. But once they were in Agra, the first monument that Babur commissioned, it was in fact not even a monument, the first garden that he commissioned. So the first Mughal garden I'm referring to, that is in Agra. It's called the Aram Bagh. Aram Bagh in Agra lays the foundation of the later Mughal gardens, of how they would be. Now, an interesting thing is that Aram Bagh, if you try to Google it, you will find it, but it will be called by the name of Ram Bagh, which is the garden of Ram. Now, that's another interesting thing because the locals that were here, over years, due to the distortion of the word Aram, it went on to be referred as Ram Bagh. Okay, so if you ask for Aram Bagh, very less people will be able to tell you, but they will be able to tell you where Ram Bagh is. We have this beautiful mosque, which is in the, we call this area as Palli Par. This is the other side of the river bank, not the side on which Taj Mahal and Red Forts are. So since Taj Mahal, Red Fort, all these are the main monuments, the reference point would always be this side of the bank. And that side of the bank was called Palli Par. So the Humayun's Mosque, which is in Palli Par, is also an interesting monument, although it is not preserved by the Archaeological Survey of India from what I remember. And it is kind of, just coming apart. After that, the next monument that kind of was built, in fact, it was a series of monuments which was built because after Humayun, it is Akbar who comes to Agra and he starts working on the Agra fort and also the city of Agra. So Agra fort is formed, Agra fort is built, which is a city in itself, and there are many monuments which are within Agra fort. But also with Agra fort, what is formed is this whole city which is on the river bank and where there are multiple monuments which come up over the next 100 years. But also a lot of monuments which are not present now. So if we talk about, we all know about Taj Mahal, Red Fort. What we don't know about is Itmat-ud-Daula, Chini Ka Roza. We don't know about the erstwhile now what we call as the Tannery, which is right next to Taj Mahal. There is another beautiful garden which is, if you're facing Taj Mahal, then it's on the right hand side. There is another monument there. It's a beautiful park, in fact. Most of the people, they don't know about it. And there would be a series of monuments. These are graves and tombs of erstwhile Mughal prince and princesses. or the ministers. So these lands were really given to the rulers or the nobles for their lifetime, because this land actually belonged to the crown, and they could not have really taken this as a family thing. But the smart way, I think, that they kind of moved around it was that they started burying their loved ones there and creating a maqbara over there, so that the land kind of is kind of held within the family. And also what was founded, if we go a bit inwards towards the city, was the Shahi Jama Masjid, the Akbar's tomb, which is again very, very beautiful, the Maqbara of Maryam uz-Zabani, which is right opposite to Akbar's tomb. There was a series of posts, which we call the Kos Minar, which were on a distance of every coast, which were laid out all around the Silk Route, in order to make this trading route secure for the city, not just for the city but actually for the whole empire. And the Shahi Eidgah was founded. So these kind of like all these buildings, they come within the next 100 years of when Akbar took charge of the crown. And of course, I mean, how can we forget the Fatehpur Sikri, the great Fatehpur Sikri? The whole city was founded by the King Akbar. And then if we talk about more lesser known monuments, which are more smaller, we have this place called Jinjun Katora, which is a mausoleum right there near the mausoleum of Kandahari Begum. And this is the area which we now call Khandari, but it was erstwhile referred to as Kandahari Mahal, or the Mahal of the Begum from Kandahar. And then there are other smaller and monuments which do not even have a name. They might be the remnants of bigger layouts, which are now not there. So you really can't make the connection, because you have a lot of these beautiful octagonal towers, which served as the boundaries of the royal parks, which are within the city. In areas like Hakiman Gali or Kala Mahal or Belanganj, a lot of these places are there. There are also a lot of these dargahs, which are still very, very revered by the local people. And they are also kind of floundered within the city of Akbarabad. There are mosques, lesser mosques than Jama Masjid, but still very, very beautiful. We have the Mautbat Khan Masjid, we have the Akbari Masjid. There are these beautiful mohallas. We have the whole Tajganj. We have Loha Mandi, which is another beautiful mohalla. And if you go inside these mohallas, you'll find these fantastic, beautiful havelis. Talking about syncretic culture of the city, or the syncretic architecture of the city, we have monuments, which is a church which was commissioned by Akbar, where he gave land and he gave money to these Jesuits to build a church right outside the walled city. Now, of course, Akbar's church is in the center of the city because the city has grown. But at that point of time, it would be right outside the walled city, somewhere near the Ghat of Azam Khan, which we now call Ghatia Azam Khan. And around this church was this whole small location, which we call a tola, which emerged, which is still now called Padri Tola, or the Tola of the priests, the Christian priests, Padris. Then we had a sizable amount of people who were living here from Armenia. And these were mostly Armenian traders, but a lot of them were also in the Mughal forces. And that's why the Roman Catholic cemetery of Agra has this whole place, it's this whole section where you see graves of the Armenians. And how do you know that these are graves of the Armenians? Because, well, Armenian script is written onto them. and they are all kind of, huddled together. We also know about the temples which were being funded by the Mughals. Every month a certain amount would come to maintain the temple and to pay the priests. Now some of these temples, they are right below the stretchy bridge, the erstwhile stretchy bridge, where there is even a tablet which says that okay, this temple area was funded by the Mughal kings. So these are the very, very cosmopolitan beginnings of the city. In Agra, you would have found, if this was the 17th century, in fact, in Agra, you would have found people from all over the globe. There were Britishers who wanted to seek land permits and who were coming here for trade. There were the French, there were the Portuguese, there were the Armenians. There were people from all across Bharat or Hindustan, as we now call it. There were people from China who were coming here for trade, because Agra has a very, very important place, a market called Rawatpada, or again the place of the Rawats. Now Rawatpada is famed to have controlled almost all the trade output of China. So this market, Rawatpada, is the market of spices, and the whole spice trade really was kind of controlled from this market. It's very, very close to the river, and it is right adjacent to the heart of the city.
For over 100 years, between 1526 and 1638, Agra remained the imperial capital of the Mughals. Under them, the city thrived and experienced its most glorious phase. However, in 1638, Emperor Shah Jahan shifted the capital to Delhi and built the city of Shahjahanabad there. After the Mughals, towards the end of the 18th century, Agra saw Marathas, Jats of Bharatpur, Scindias, and the British making their way into the city. Even today, you can find a clutch of monuments depicting the modern history of Agra, especially from the British era.
If you pass through the Mughal era, you talk about the colonial era, so many beautiful, beautiful buildings they were made in the city. Think about St. Peter's Church, St. Patrick's Church, the Church of St. John's. A whole city was developed, which we call now the Kant area, so that the Britishers, they do not have to mingle with the commoners or the Indians. And throughout this Kant area, you will find a lot of these churches. You will find the homes of the missionaries. You will find beautiful, beautiful bungalows that line up this Kant area or the Mall Road. Then there were markets which were founded by the Britishers. We call it the Sadar Bazaar. In fact, you talk about markets, we have so many markets which were founded even by the Mughals. We have Raja Ki Mandi, we have Loha Mandi, we have Tote Ka Tal, we have Kinari Bazaar, we have Kashmiri Bazaar. So really a lot of trade was happening in this city. In fact, it is said that 2/3 of the world's riches were controlled by the Mughals, and 25% of the world's GDP was happening within the Mughal Empire, and Agra for sure was the center of it all. And if you talk about more modern monuments which dot the skyline of the city, we have this another beautiful monument called the Radha Swami Samadh, which is made by the people of the Radha Swami community. It's a beautiful monument, and in a way, I think it is not, I'll not compare. It is a beautiful monument with a still which has like a gold finial on top. So if you ever happen to fly into Agra, the only two buildings which you'll be able to kind of recognize from afar is this Radha Swami Samadh with its gold finial and the Taj Mahal, of course. Then we have St. John's College, which is another beautiful college. It's right there in the city near Hari Parvat. We have the Catholic cemetery, which I already talked about. Another beautiful, beautiful monument, because right inside it is what people now call as the Red Taj Mahal. Because this building is kind of influenced by the Taj Mahal, but it is made by the Britishers, who do not have, I believe, that much money. Not, of course, the British Crown, but the British officers. So they are making it in red sandstone, kind of copying the original layout of Taj Mahal. And it's, of course, on a much, much smaller scale. But it's beautiful to see the fusion of the aesthetics of the Britishers and the aesthetics of the Mughals.
Through its long, eventful history, what has survived is the essence of Agra, and it has remained a city of continuum. It has always been a center of rich cultural traditions, beautiful art and architecture, and continues to be a vibrant hub of activities. Be it the lip-smacking and traditional cuisine, or the unique handicrafts like the famous Pietra Dura or marble inlay.
So when we talk about the culture of Agra, we have a very, very diverse and I'll say very, very strong culture, diverse culture and very, very rich culture, in fact. Because there are so many communities which are living together for centuries. So it has all kind of, become jumbled, but it is also very, very separate. One of the markers of culture is, of course, food. Now, if you are in Agra and if you get up early in the morning, the first things that you will find in the morning is Nihari and Halim, which is around 6 a.m. you will find these things. Then by 7:30 a.m., the cuisines from the Braj area, which is Bedai, Kachori, Puri, people will start having that. After that, by 8 a.m., you will start having a very, very Sindhi cultural cuisine, which is called the Pakwan. You can have the Pakwan or you can have the Chola Bhatura. And then as the day graduates, there are different food items that you will get throughout the day up to the night. So, that way it's really beautiful to sometimes eat like a food which belongs to, let's say, Gujarat, or I'm referring to Dhokla, which is again, has become a very intricate part of the city, or then, having something which is like samosa or dahi bada or jalebi or Raj Kachori or Bhalla. And I think the Agra thing which is in it is that everything is made in ghee. Agra has maintained its connection with the past, and it is a city where if you come and if you look around, you will definitely see evidence of its glorious medieval past. You will be able to see it through the food, through the music, through the cuisine, through the architecture, through the way people behave with each other, through even the way the shops are located, the markets, because a lot of shops in Agra, their entrance is still made to be accessed by the horses. So the platform is much higher than a regular shop. It's much higher from the road. So that's because earlier people used to come on horseback to buy something like that, to buy goods from these shops. And these shops, they still exist. These homes, they still exist. And that's why I believe that there is so much in Agra beyond Taj Mahal that needs to be talked about, that needs to be explored and documented before all of it is gone.